Hi folks, this is Abel James and welcome to the Fat Burning Man Show, where we talk about real food and real results. Today we're here with the organizers of the much anticipated PaleoFX, Keith and Michelle Norris. But before we get to the interview, I have a couple of cool and very fun announcements. Firstly, I just joined Sean Croxton over at the great podcast and online show Underground Wellness, so make sure you check that out on Blog Talk Radio. Sean's a great dude and we had a lot of fun. And secondly, if you're listening to this on September the 28th, then this is officially my last day of having a day job, which I'm really excited about. I'm super humbled by your support and I'm deciding to do this full time. When I finished up my book and started up my blog just a little less than, 10 months ago, 9 months ago, I never would have anticipated all of this amazing support and the wonderful community that's risen up around this whole concept of real food and ancestral eating and health. And I'm so happy to have you guys along for the ride. I couldn't have done it without all of your wonderful reviews, your emails to keep me going, and the ones that hopefully helped you along the way. And I really appreciate your support. So it's a special thank you, and it's a celebration sale. I'm opening up some spots in my personal online coaching program for just $1 for the first 30 days. And if you like it and you stick with it, I'd love to keep working with you. It's $27 a month and we do online webinars. I try to answer all of your questions that come up along the way. So if you want to check that out, you can head over to Lean Body Community. And that's set up for podcast listeners right now to get 30 days of online training from me and some of my experts for just $1. So check it out over at leanbodycommunity.com, or you can just go to the show notes and I'll have it up on fatburningman.com as well. So thanks so much for your support, you guys. It's been a wonderful ride so far, and I can't wait to see what the future holds. All right, so on to today's interview. I'm here with an expert in effective exercise and a man who always manages to make me look like a featherweight, Keith Norris. Also joining us is his wife, Michelle, Queen of the Kitchen, and of course, they're both the organizers behind PaleoFX. So in today's show, of course, you get the scoop on the highly anticipated PaleoFX conference in Austin, Texas, and I'll certainly be there again and plan to moderate a panel or two. How you can get a killer workout in just 15 minutes twice a week, effective exercise strategies for both men and women, and how Barbie dolls and bodybuilders ruined it for everyone. All right, let's go hang out with the Norrises. All right, today we're here with the folks behind PaleoFX 13, Keith and Michelle Norris. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. So Twitter told me that you had a double espresso today, Keith, so we'd better watch out. Is that true?
It's always true. Pick a day. I've had a couple of double espressos. And yes, today I did.
A couple of doubles, huh? Wow.
Doubles, always.
Yeah, that sounds like me. All right, so Keith, why don't we start with your story? I know you've been doing fitness and nutrition for quite some time. How did you get into it in the first place?
Yeah, so I was a very active child, much to my mom's chagrin, but they got me in organized sports very early. And I had the great fortune to be coached very early on in my athletic career by some of the best coaches around. It was just, it was just dumb luck on my part. I ran AAU track and field, did some taekwondo and kickboxing, and of course, being from South Texas, got heavy into football.
Mm-hmm.
So as time went on, I got a little bit older. I was about 12, 13 years old. I wound up going to a gym in San Antonio, Texas. That gym happened to be Powerhouse Gym. And it was I didn't know it at the time, but it was the best experience that a kid like me, who was both super driven and just hungry for knowledge, could have had.
Yeah.
This gym had everything. It had everything from bodybuilding to strength and conditioning to Olympic lifting to powerlifting, and it was all under one roof. So I got to see it all, and I got to see the interweavings of all different types of methodologies and techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was just a fantastic lab to grow up in.
That sounds awesome. Michelle, how about you? I know you're more into the cooking piece, but how did you get into this whole mess in the beginning?
Oh, let's see. Keith and I knew each other in high school. I did I've been in Powerhouse Gym actually in San Antonio. So I grew up and was raised in San Antonio. I've always been a cook. Um, Always loved cooking and enjoyed it. And so I've always pretty much been a chef. I was I came into paleo actually, though kicking and screaming. My specialty was Italian. So
Oh no.
yes, it was. Anyway, so Keith, when he became paleo, he was paleo for probably about a year. When he kept telling me, "I really think that you might be celiac. You might want to check that out." And so I became paleo kind of by default because I'm borderline celiac. And so, so I wasn't really, wasn't one of those people that, oh, I became paleo and I just became really nerdy about the whole thing and wanted to learn everything that I could possibly learn about paleo and dove right into it. I became paleo and I just, got better and I was okay. And, but I wasn't happy about it.
And when she says kicking and screaming, that's literally, she was kicking and screaming.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, but I maintained, cooking normal for our kids. I didn't stop, cooking what I cooked for them because my kids loved homemade pizza and homemade pasta. And, so I kept cooking the normal way that I did for them. So I didn't change anything for anybody but, me and Keith. And so it took a while for me to finally realize that this needed to change completely. And so let's see, fast forward to 2009, I started really, really getting into paleo and really understanding that our lives really needed to change. And I had been writing, I'd been doing quite a bit of writing for other people. And I, at that time, was a finalist actually to be on the Barbie show.
Oh, wow.
And I ended up ultimately not being chosen, which ended up being in my favor because then we lost Brittany. My daughter was killed in a car accident. And my focus completely changed after that. I decided that I wanted to change everything that I did and change. Brittany was going to be a minister and was going to be a missionary, and she had planned to work for, serve other people, the homeless, for the, the poor and that type of thing. And I decided that was what I wanted to do, was change things for people that were less fortunate than we are. And that, for me, she used to work in the food kitchens in Atlanta, just south of where her college was. And while Brittany's gifts were, singing and music and everything, she still went down to the, food kitchens and worked there. And she would tell me about it down there. And she didn't cook or anything, but she would tell me about all of this. And she'd say, "Mom, you should go and cook in the food kitchens and everything." And I always thought about someday, I should do this. Well, I decided that's what my focus needed to be. And so that's what I chose, is that Brittany, I wanted to create a foundation in her name and go change food policy for, food kitchens and change the way that we feed our less fortunate. So that became my focus. And then I really, really got into paleo and really made the decision that that's where I needed to change. So,
wow, that's amazing. And then you put on PaleoFX, which really, I think, turned into something cohesive for the community. It was the first time that a lot of these folks had met each other in such a great way forward, I think.
Yeah, we think so too. And we really want PaleoFX going forward to use it as a vehicle for public policy change and to address issues of sustainability, which go hand in hand with public policy change. And we really want PaleoFX to kind of veer that direction as well, is educating others in the benefits of paleo. And we really want to educate the public on the benefits of smartly programmed strength and conditioning as well.
Right. So let's talk a little bit more about the sustainability piece, because I know a lot of people have the idea that paleo is just essentially like Atkins on steroids, right? So
Sure, yeah.
how can we address that in a responsible way?
Well, Michelle might be able to better answer this since she just came from the Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance
Right.
conference here in Austin, Texas. You know, just for my end, and I'll just say this, it boils down again to education. Now, there's obviously, and there's been some articles floating around about the world's going to have to turn vegetarian soon, or we're going to run out of water. I mean, there's so much misinformation and propaganda that's put out. But the world did very, very well without human intervention for eons, right? with herbivores and everything went along fine. Now, obviously, the way we're going right now can't be sustained when you start having to rely on fossil fuels to grow these crops. Obviously, this unsustainable. So I'll let Michelle kind of take over from there.
Well, I think Joel Salatin says it best. It's called crop rotation.
Yep.
It's called, you plan how you're going to manage your crops, and you plan how you're going to manage your animals, and you rotate out your animals from your crops. It's done by other countries. It's done by Brazil. They have nothing but grass-fed meats, and that's all that they allow in that country.
Right.
So if Brazil can do it, there's no reason why we can't do it. So, it's just a matter of whether or not we demand that as citizens and as consumers, and start requiring that of our farmers, of the marketplace. That's what we demand to consume. That's what's going to be given to us. But when, the thing is that if we also, the other piece of this too, and Rob will get on his high horse about this and say the subsidies are part of the issue as well. When the subsidies get taken away and everybody starts seeing the real cost of what meat really costs us, and what corn really costs, and what everything really costs us, if they took all of that away, people would totally understand that grass-fed meats are pretty reasonable. I mean, it's pretty insane. I mean, like Diana Rogers was on the panel with us, and she is a sustainable farmer. She can continue to sustain her farm without any intervention from the government, and she doesn't have to have a subsidy. She doesn't have to have anything. She runs her farm. She has to pay a tax to do that, which is insane.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. And so the simple fact of the matter is, if we took away subsidies and we actually put that money back into a system that actually works, like what
right.
is doing, and into farms like Joel's farm,
which is very productive.
Right.
Yeah.
And we would actually have good quality, nutritious food for everybody to eat. And so anybody wants to argue sustainability, I dare them to get on a panel with Diana and Joel and Rob.
And so this is really a battle that's being fought on two fronts, or that this is the way Michelle and I feel about it. It's what can you do personally in your life to affect change, and what can you do in a public policy arena to affect change. And I don't want to put all of my efforts on one front. I think they need to be divided, and both of those fronts need to be pushed forward as hard as possible.
Absolutely. And that brings up an interesting point too with the Brazil issue. In other countries, it's just kind of a given that animals are treated in a certain way, like that particular animal should be raised, for example, beef on free roaming pastures.
Yeah.
And I think there's this undercurrent in American society that we still kind of understand that to be the case, even when we're buying a hamburger at McDonald's, where the reality is just completely divorced from that.
Sure. Right. Yeah. And it's also an issue, and this is where I can agree with vegetarians and vegans. It's also an animal reverence issue as well. Just because I'm a carnivore in no way means that I want to treat an animal harshly.
Right.
You know, and there's proper animal husbandry, and then there's just the debauchery of what we have with factory farming right now.
Right.
Two totally different issues.
Absolutely.
And, you know, that's the thing, is that I think that we, particularly vegans and vegetarians who are vegans and vegetarians for the simple moral issue, we have far more in common with them than we have not in common.
And that's a really interesting point. I was actually talking to a vegan today, and you know, I joke that the diet that I recommend is 70 to 80% usually raw vegan.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think a lot of paleos would agree with that. It's not this meat fest that a lot of people think it is. It's more about the sustainability issue. And I think that's one of the issues that we need to address if we want to scale this and make it a larger movement than it is right now.
Oh, exactly. Yes, we definitely need to bring these other factions into the fold, and this is one reason why we really want to emphasize the sustainability issues at PaleoFX. Is we can't fight this battle as one just closed group. We're going to have to bring other groups into it, and we're going to have to bring those groups that we really have more in common than we do not, especially on sustainability issues and public policy change. And I think we can be very, very effective as a larger critical mass.
Absolutely. And that doesn't necessarily mean being shackled by the word paleo or constrained by it. And I know that, Keith, you've been, in this realm for a long time, and I would imagine that you've probably been coaching similar tactics as far as nutrition goes for a while. But paleo has just subsumed all these other little mini movements, it seems.
And really, when I initially got into paleo and was initially looking, I was kind of led to it by Lauren Cordain and then Art Devaney. I was kind of reading some of their early stuff, and I thought, you know what, this is very much the way I would, the diet that I would prescribe for a wrestler going in, into the later parts of getting ready for a meet, right? Because you want these guys to diet down, you want them to lose fat, but you want them to maintain strength, obviously. So the last thing you want them to do is crash and lose muscle mass. And I thought, wow, I never really looked at the health implications. It was always a performance, from a performance end. And so that's when it really, I thought, this same diet can actually be very, very healthy on the inside as well. That's really what got my attention and really made me dive into paleo, because I saw the results of it performance-wise and external-wise. And everybody that had been in coaching at that time knew that type of diet worked. When I played Pop Warner football, I was always one of the kids that had to diet down to make weight, right? So there was a weigh-in before every game. And my mom, Texas football mom, right? So what was my diet going into that? It was protein and fat and vegetables.
Yeah.
And I look back on that, and I was a lean, wiry kid on that. And I just look back at that and go, wow. I mean, it's, they knew then what it took to be lean and healthy.
Isn't that strange? I was talking to my grandmother, and my folks were all raised on a big farm in New Hampshire, and I guess very small by today's standards, but it seemed big at the time. There were 7 in the family, and they all seemed to know intuitively that starches were fattening, and removing them, especially if you're not working on the farm all day, for example, or if you're not playing football, removing them would make you lean. But it seems like we've lost that somewhere along the line in just a generation or two.
And it's amazing how quick that knowledge is just kind of drained away. I mean, it's really amazing.
So how do we change that? Because everyone freaks out when they hear that I use butter or heavy cream or other fats. What do we do about that?
I think we have to counter the misinformation that's just been force-fed for the last 40 years. And it has been a massive amount of misinformation. And again, this comes back to public policy change. Now, you can educate yourself. You can educate your friends as best you can, those close to you, those you interact with. And so that's one front. But on the other front, there's got to be some public policy change. Otherwise, unfortunately, that is the loudest bullhorn there is.
Right.
So you have to grab that bullhorn and take control of that bullhorn to get the message out to the masses.
Right. And so I'd be interested also, since you've been working in fitness and nutrition for a long time, it must have been so strange, when the low-fat craze really caught on. Do a lot of people come in and just think that that's the only way, and then you're just like, it's not? I mean, what do you do when someone comes in, they're dieting with quotation marks?
Yeah, it's so when you run in the paleo circles, so to speak, and you're used to just speaking this language with people, and you're used to there being a common agreement on certain subjects like, good fats are good for you, and that very, very basic deck plate idea. And when you come up against somebody who is still in the low fat craze and you start bringing this stuff up, it is just a look of utter shock.
Yeah.
And it is a look of like, I thought I was coming to somebody that was halfway knowledgeable, and you're telling me to do what? Yeah, it is a total re-education process with a lot of people. But on the other side, and the bright side of things is I'm getting more and more and more people coming in with this, at least acceptance that they've been told the last 40 years is maybe wrong, and they need to reinvestigate. And that's becoming more and more, which is heartening.
Yeah, that is good. And in terms of health and performance, I know you've talked about this and presented about this a few times, and there's always a versus put in between health and performance. Shouldn't there be an and in some cases?
Sure, yeah. And so that's the way I live my life, is a health and performance. Or that's the way I try to that's the way I try to run things. It can be a tightrope, especially if you're trying to push the performance end of things. And I think the reason I came up with that and started speaking about it was because the other side of diet, talking with people about trying to get their diets changed, was having people come in with preconceived ideas of what quote unquote fitness was, and what it took to be fit. And just time and time again, I would run up against people that say, I really want to be fit, but I just don't have time to, put in 8 hours a week towards that end.
Right.
And I would say, well, it's not going to take 8 hours a week. It might take a couple hours a week, but not 8. And again, I would get the low fat person, I would get that very incredulous look, like, yeah, right.
Yeah. What's this guy selling me?
Yeah. What's he selling me? So yeah, that's another, misinformation. And I think, and I don't know where this came about, but, people, especially, we just came out of the Olympics, right? And people see these fantastic athletes, and it's always their amount of training and their dedication to their sport is always ballyhooed, which is not a bad thing. And I take nothing away from people who want to be competitive at all.
Yeah.
Because I was that way myself. I was just super hyper driven and just competitive. But I always knew in the back of my mind that that's not necessarily healthy.
Yeah.
And it played out physically for me. I could tell, even though I was at the height of my performance, but internally and physically, it was tough on my body. And everybody knows who's a competitive athlete, at a certain point, you're going to wear out, and you can't do that forever. Hopefully you re-gauge from that and you come back into the healthy part of it. Unfortunately, some of these guys just completely quit working out. Yeah. Go unhealthy the other way.
So how did you notice your body revolting against the high performance or overtraining?
It was a general all-around ache is the best way I can, your joints hurt.
Yeah, I know that.
Just total internal inflammation in the body.
Yeah.
Almost, and in some extremes, almost flu-like symptoms. That's the extreme end of it. I'm talking, towards the end of a football season, towards, the end of a 14, 15 game season, and you're just freaking beat up.
Yeah.
But you're still able to perform on the field at a very, very high level for that couple of hours, and then it's just crash and burn for another week to recoup and come back and be able to do that again. But that's an extreme. That's an extreme that most people won't get into, but many people will still push themselves way past the point. If they're looking for health, they're still pushing themselves way too far.
Yeah.
If health is a goal, if performance is a goal, there's ways to mitigate that to where you're not suffering so much, but you can still have high performance. So you have to meet people where they're at, figure out what their goals are, and then move forward from there and give them a good programming structure from that.
Right. Okay. So, and I really like the way that you approach the health piece and minimizing the stress to the body that a lot of exercise or certain types of exercise can do. So tell us a little bit about what you recommend for the high intensity piece.
So for the high intensity piece, I really think that the high intensity interval training is about the best way to go. And that's a blanket. Okay. That's a huge blanket.
Right.
So high intensity interval training can involve everything from body weight exercises to sprints, and things of that nature. I tend to throw a resistance exercise component into that, and so I call that high intensity interval resistance training. Essentially, I'm doing the same thing. I'm producing a high powered burst of activity for anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute and a half, and then I back off for a scaled amount of rest time. And wash, rinse, repeat. And it will go for roughly a half hour. And that I have found to be the most effective way to train, especially clients who are pinched for time.
Right.
And I do the same thing myself. For instance, today I did a trap bar deadlift routine today. It took me about, I don't know, by the time I got done warming up, it was about a half hour. But even when I'm lifting heavy, I still truncate my rest time. My rest times between sets were maybe 45 seconds.
Wow.
One, it keeps my metabolism kicked up through the entire workout. But number two, it prevents me from lifting too heavy. And a lot of people will go like, well, you're lifting weights. Why wouldn't you want to lift super heavy? The thing is, I'm saving my skeletal system and structural system. I don't want to rest to the point to where I can hit it super, super hard, especially now. If that were my goal, if my goal was to be a power lifter, say, I would definitely extend my rest periods.
Yeah.
But that's not what I want. I'm in it for the long haul. I'm not looking to, shatter any records deadlifting. So.
Or any knees.
Or any knees, yes. That was taken care of on the football field.
Yeah. So you said 45 seconds for the space between deadlifts?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the time for me to add weight. That's roughly what it is. So I did a set, slapped on some more weight, took a few breaths, and I was right back on it again.
Wow. So what do the reps look like and the sets in that case?
So the sets, I think I wound up with about 6 sets, and a repetition range was between 7, and I ended up with 4. So that's about where my rep range was. And I knew I wanted that rep range going in. I wanted to stay between 4 and 7 going in. So, and I keep a pretty meticulous log on myself. I know, okay, if this is a rep range I want to hit, I've got this laid out. I know roughly the weights I'm going to be using. And I always auto-regulate, which is a way for me also not to overtrain.
Yeah.
I know what my maximum repetition or my maximum weight is for a 7 rep repetition in a trap bar deadlift. And if I'm feeling strong and I work up to that, I can try to beat that repetition or exceed it. Today I matched it. So, it was a punch the clock workout. It worked out great.
Nice.
I survived to fight another day.
And it's not necessarily to failure, right?
No, it's not. Now, there are some exercises I will do to failure, but an exercise like that I would never do to failure. It's just it's one of those questions where you go, why?
Yeah.
It's just the risk to benefit ratio is just not there.
And this is a couple of times a week, 3 times a week?
My workouts, now generally I work out personally about 6 times a week.
Okay.
But the difference is I change the intensity of every workout too. So my quote unquote workout for one day might only be 20 minutes of, just power cleans.
Yeah.
Or I might have another workout in another day that's an hour and a half of interval sprints and in jumps and bar work, and that would be on the other extreme. It's a little bit more intense, and that's a long period of time. I kind of and I got the idea from Art Devaney using power law. And the reason Art Devaney's discussion of power law made sense to me is when I went back and looked at my own training logs over a while, I thought, when I first read about that, I was like, and I don't know, I like Art, but I think he's a little bit nuts on this. But I kind of went back and looked at my own training logs, and I was like, wow, there is a natural ebb and flow to my intensities throughout these workouts, and it just works out naturally. And I'm the type of person that I have never really programmed my workouts necessarily, so I won't use a linear progression in my workouts. In other words, I won't say, today's Tuesday the 11th, I am going to hit 455 on a trap bar deadlift. Been in the game long enough to know that never works for long. Life happens, and it just never works. So I'm more of the auto regulation type. And when I feel internally like I'm ready to blow the carbon out, I certainly do that. Today I would say was it wasn't that intense a workout. It came, it was pretty. It finished up in pretty quick order, and I'd probably rate that on probably a 4 scale on intensity. And it'll probably be another 2 weeks before I hit a 10. And then it'll taper off. It'll taper off again. So it just naturally flows like that.
Yeah. I wrote down this quote that I swiped from your blog that I really liked, and it said, "It's not for the lack of desire or inspiration that the majority of people fail at their fitness goals. Failure ultimately results from the cumulative fatigue inflicted from the springing of life's little booby traps." I love that.
And it's the truth. I mean, it's so many people that I train, and really training is 90% psychology. I call it the cat out of the bag, but it really is. I mean, you have to help these people through these. I've got 3 kids, they're all sick. My husband's traveling to Seattle. I'm just not going to have time to work out. These are the things that will just derail somebody. And if I miss this workout, then it's a little bit easier to miss the next workout, and before you know it, you're back into that non-working out habit, or that habit of eating bad foods, or whatever you're trying to change. And it's a little cumulative things that just keep piling on. So if you know how to best navigate those little roadblocks, I mean, you're golden then. You can make it.
And that's really the challenge, is trying to find a way, not a perfect workout routine necessarily, but a perfect mindset of knowing that you need to work out.
That's totally it.
And just making it happen.
Because in reality, the tools that you're going to have available to you are going to change constantly. The times that you're going to have to work out, some years you're going to have lots of time to work out, other years you're going to be crunched. This life is in constant flux, and this is just something that was important enough to me throughout my life that I've always kept it close, and I've figured out ways to navigate everything. I mean, once I left college, I went into the military, and I worked out the entire time I was in the military, deployed. I mean, there were some times, we had nothing but basically blast straps, which are came to be TRX, but and that's all you had. And so that's all we had. That's all we used. And I knew that, hey, I'm not going to be in this situation forever. It's going to change again. Everything's cool. I'll adapt my workout to this for right now. And then I'll adapt again when I'm back in, I have access to a gym. I think that mindset needs to be established. But a lot of people, will freak out too if they're away from a gym, and they just, sometimes it's knowledge, right? Well, how do I cobble together a workout when I only have, body weight and bars and a TRX band?
Yeah, that's more than a lot of people have. That's more than I have most of the time, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. And you just do what you can with what you have, right? I mean, that's the name of the game.
Yeah, and it might be a matter of getting creative. And actually, usually it is. Yeah,
that's the but that's the fun of it too. I mean,
well, for Keith, it's a matter of sanity.
Yeah.
It's not even an option.
Right.
To work out, so.
I can relate to that. Now, Michelle, let's talk a little bit. Do you work out? I wouldn't imagine you do in a similar way as Keith. What are the sex differences that you guys recommend in terms of working out?
No, I don't even remotely work out. I'm sad to say that, actually, but no, I work out with Keith probably twice a week. That's all I need. I don't need, and for him, it is really sanity. I'm not really even joking about that. It is sanity for him.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
That's what he needs to have, that kind of stress release, and kind of it clears his head. And I mean, seriously, if he goes for a few days where he hasn't worked out, it's really me telling him, get the hell out of here. No, I mean, like, there's been times where we've been in a situation where, like, we were moving or whatever, and even though we're, like, moving heavy things, it's not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
For him, he needs that time where it's actually him and some weights, or him and it's his time, and
because it's a meditation.
It's too, really
right?
It is, yeah.
And so even though he's like lifting heavy stuff, and believe me, I have heavy furniture, it's not the same thing. So, but for me, I need 2 workouts a week and I'm good. For me, it's a health thing, and it's, I'm, with the paleo diet, that's one of the great things. And I think it's for me to tell women, this is like the best thing you can ever do for your health and for your weight. And you don't have to measure stuff or ever go on another diet again. And it's probably the best thing you can do for your emotional sanity, and for you to not be, crazy that time of the month. You don't be, that crazy person.
Mm-hmm.
So Michelle would be a typical client of mine, right? She's got very, very little time. She's going to school. She's chefing. She's got PaleoFX going on. She's got
10 million other things.
10 million other things. And so it's a half hour twice a week. And that she gets in, gets it done, and gets out. And she's in great health.
The other day, I told him, he goes, come on, let's go out here and get your workout. And I go, you only have, and he tells me he's got a client coming in 15 minutes. I said, it's 15 minutes. And he was like, don't worry, you only need 15 minutes.
Oh, no.
Right. Seriously, in 15 minutes, I couldn't walk. I was just like,
what did you do to her, Keith?
I will never, ever question you when you say 15 minutes is all you need.
The funny part, or maybe not funny part about it, was the following day we went to a football game at Texas A&M, and she had to walk up, I don't know how many steps and ramps. Yeah, she was not too happy with me that day.
Yeah. So what if you only have 15 minutes? What sort of workout do you recommend in that case?
Well, one thing that we have at our disposal at Efficient Exercise, of course, we have the ArxFit equipment, which is pretty much what I had her on. It's very difficult to describe verbally. It's one of those things you have to see and actually get on to. And I don't know if you've ever tried it, Abel. Maybe at the last PaleoFX, maybe you climbed on one.
I did. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very. So it's I can get it done in 15 minutes using that equipment.
With some other stuff.
With some other stuff, yeah. And I'm very non-dogmatic when it comes to programming. I use everything from body weight to the state-of-the-art ARX equipment that we have at Efficient Exercise. I am very non-dogmatic, and this goes back to just what I saw from at Powerhouse Gym. When I was growing up and immersed in this. And I saw what things worked, and I saw how these techniques were applied, and, towards what end too. Like, am I working out to be an athlete? Am I working out to be a bodybuilder?
Yeah.
General fitness, women's issues, and they train different as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I just I have all of these tools at my disposal. So I get to. It's like a kid in a candy store, a meat store. Let's put it that way, not a candy.
That sounds about right.
Lots of options to choose from. So,
Now, what about this issue? This is one that I've been tackling with some of my clients recently. The issue of appearance versus performance, and not just health versus performance, because these 3 issues are intertwined but can be competing against each other constantly. And I think, especially with bodybuilding catching on and then Photoshop catching on, our ideals, both for men and for women especially, are completely out of whack. You go back and you look at someone like Charles Atlas or the beginning bodybuilders, and actually at the last PaleoFX, that was kind of cool, just looking at how their bodies were designed back then and what was the ideal body. And it's completely different. I mean, if you look at them now, those bodies were not shredded. You didn't see 6-packs everywhere or vascularity even. They kind of looked not pudgy, but they looked healthy, I would say.
Well, there's so much, and again, it's misinformation and it's hype. So yeah, somebody walking around at that very, very low body fat level, that's just not, I mean, you have to realize that these people got ready and dieted down for a photo shoot. That you can do that with very, very much discomfort to diet down to a, that kind of appearance. It is, when you see these people and they're walking around every day normally, they definitely do not look like that.
Right.
And this was something else that I was exposed to from a very, very young age. I saw people getting ready for shows, and you saw the difference. And you also saw how friggin' miserable they were a couple of weeks before the show. It was just, I mean, it's just miserable for them to maintain that lower body fat level. And then they come back to a normal walking around body fat level after that. But for them to get ready for a photo shoot or for a show, it's just excruciating. Right.
And a good measure of that, I think, is you just look at the person's face. For men or for women, even if their bodies look rocking, there's something about those like hollowed out eyes that's always a little bit creepy.
Yeah, it is. It's, and again, it comes back to health. Is that a healthy state to be in? It's not. It's definitely not. Although that look has been pushed as the healthy look since, I don't know, maybe the late 70s.
Yeah.
And it's just, especially out of the bodybuilding world, it just kind of became, after about mid-70s, just kind of became this freak show that it's become now.
That's a good point, a freak show. So bodybuilders ruined it for men, just like Barbies and Photoshop fitness models ruined it for women.
Oh, yeah. Michelle and I were out at the LA Fitness Expo. When was that? Last summer?
No, it was January.
January, that's right. It is. I mean, it was a blast. We had a blast there, but it is a freak show.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just unreal.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's insane.
That's completely insane. It's just not even, that's not normal for human beings to look like that.
But if you look at male bodybuilders from the late 50s, I mean, those guys looked really good. I mean, they had a great level of muscularity. Their body fat level they didn't have the paper skin look.
Right.
Very, very fit individuals. And that's always, when I think of the way I want to look, I always try to think of those guys from the late 50s, early 60s, before the drug culture took over in bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Because that was done naturally. It was clean eating. And by the way, they were probably the original athletes to employ a paleo diet. If you look at the diet these guys ate, it was essentially a paleo diet.
Right.
And they look good. They look really, really good.
Yeah, it's kind of like if your grandmother thinks that you look healthy, then you're in good shape.
Yeah.
If people are like trying to throw donuts at you, then you're not.
Yeah.
And it is. And I wish, hopefully there's something we can do about that, because it's deeply entrenched in the paleo culture too, and the whole CrossFit thing, that these ideals are very much there. And we've talked about this on a few podcasts in the past, especially in regards to men's and women's issues and the different ideals that are pushed upon each sex that are just completely out of line with reality. So what do you recommend in terms of body fat levels, and how do you measure those in your own practice, Keith?
Yeah, so body fat levels, I always say that body fat levels run hand in hand with bench press. So when someone comes in and tells me they have a 405-pound bench press, I can figure it's probably 205 legitimately. And when somebody comes in telling me they're 6% body fat, it's probably 15. That's the way these things get inflated and deflated.
Yeah.
So the problem with body fat, well, let's back up. The big problem is with the scale, right? So, and especially females or men who are looking to lose weight, obviously the only tool, or the most ready tool they have, is a scale. Scale tells you absolutely nothing. I mean, it tells you your relationship with gravity, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's all it does. Because the problem is, if we go on a Biggest Loser style of workout regimen and diet, we're going to lose weight. I mean, I can make somebody lose weight really, really fast, but is it fat?
Right.
No, the problem is it's water, first of all, and it's muscle. It's going to be the first thing that's jettisoned. But on the scale, it shows up as weight. So the big thing is, first off, let's back up and let's figure out what the body fat level is truly in this person. The best way to do that is with a DEXA scan. Mm-hmm. There are other methods. Being weighed in water that's a mess, but I mean it can work and it's very, very accurate. A bod pod is another alternative to a DEXA scan. Usually a DEXA scan will only be available in a university setting.
Yeah.
We have access at the University of Texas. We have a good working relationship with the physiology lab at UT, and so we send our clients there.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Very cool. But the bod pod is pretty dang accurate as well. And bod pods, some commercial gyms will have a bod pod. Sometimes there will be an establishment that will have a bod pod itself. Mm-hmm. But that will give you a true indication of body fat. And you can't run from that. It's very, very accurate.
Yeah.
For instance, I'll have a female that's a size 6 come in, and you can just tell, okay, she's got the whole skinny fat thing going on.
Right.
She thinks she's very, very fit and everything's good because of a dress size. And here's where the psychologist portion of being a trainer comes into play. She'll go to get her body fat measured by DEXA scan and come back and it'll be 35, close to 40%.
Wow.
Which will just rock a person's world. I mean, it's just shell shocking.
Yeah.
On the flip side of this is skin fold measurements are popular and they're done quite a bit. Of course, they're very, very easy. They're non-invasive, mm-hmm. but the problem is they're highly, highly, highly inaccurate.
Yeah.
And so I always suggest, just get a bod pod or get a DEXA scan, find out what your body fat level is, and now we have something to compare. Now I have a deck plate comparison that when we start working out, when we start losing weight, I can have you go back and I can prove to you that these methods are very, very effective. And you are, in fact, losing body fat and not muscle. In fact, you're putting on muscle.
Yeah.
And losing body fat, which is exactly what we want. Because I can't tell you how many female clients I have who will come in and drop dress size after dress size after dress size, and they're standing on the scale, pointing at the scale, going, "I've only lost 2 pounds."
Yeah.
But I'm going, well, how many dress sizes have you lost?
Or I've gained.
Right.
Weight. Yeah.
It just totally blows their mind. I've gained weight and I'm losing dress sizes. Something's not right.
Or something's great.
And in fact, it's great, right? But again, that's
don't
just
understand.
It's just the cultural conditioning with the scale.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's very interesting.
And I'll give you just for instance, just so people have a body fat percentage and a mental image of what's going on. Mm-hmm. Female sprinters at the University of Texas, sprinters now, the average is about 18% body fat on mm-hmm. a female sprinter. Okay, so when females come in saying they're 6% body fat, I'm just kind of a little incredulous.
Right.
Because I know female sprinters look like at UT.
Yeah.
Okay, they're rock solid.
Yeah.
And that's about 19% body fat. So just to give your listeners just an indication, male sprinters, on the other hand, at University of Texas, they're about 9%, 8%, 9%.
Yeah.
Personally, I run 10%,
mm-hmm.
Which is another shout out to paleo because I do no dieting, none. I don't try to diet. I don't try to keep my body fat percentage low. It's just a natural consequence of following a, paleo diet.
Right. And it's pretty easy to maintain that 10%. You don't really need to do anything.
Yeah, super easy. I mean, we eat fantastic. I'm never wanting for either volume or taste.
Yeah.
I mean, especially living with a chef. I mean, that helps too.
I imagine that would. So along those lines, you were kicking and screaming, Michelle, when you came into this, right? So obviously now you're not. What would you recommend to couples or families out there who are dealing with that issue, where one person might be excited about it, but everyone else is not?
Oh boy. Oh wow.
You can say pass.
This happens routinely.
Yeah.
Where one is on board and someone else in the family is not. One spouse is in 100% and another one is putting on the brakes. Mm-hmm. This is a tough one to deal with.
Gosh, you know what? I don't even know what to see. The thing is that I had to, I totally came by default because I'm borderline celiac. So I kind of, I don't know how to answer that honestly, because, you know, even Rob and I had this discussion because some dude came up to me at AHS and he was like, how do I get my family to do this?
Yeah.
I mean, really, how do I get my family to do this? And was really like upset and very, very concerned about it. And I said, dude, cut yourself a break. If Rob Welch can't get, I mean, and look what he does for so many people. If he can't get his family to do this, you need to cut yourself a break, because, you know, I can't get my family to do it either.
Oh, I'm going to tell you, loved ones, those closest to you, are the hardest ones to bring on board.
They are.
I mean, you know, even Dallas had a hard time with his own mom. When he told me this story, I died laughing. His mom read Rob's book and she went, "This is genius." And Dallas was like, seriously? You know, so I just go, you know, it's really tough. I don't know how to, you know, Keith probably, if I hadn't had been borderline celiac, I don't know that Keith would have been able to really bring me along, because, you know, making your own pasta and your own, you know, pizza dough and your own, you know, homemade stuff is really a tough gig to come away from, because I was known for that and that was my specialty. And it's really, you know, that was something that my kids were just like, really, seriously, you're not going to make that stuff for us, when they came to visit us, because our kids are adults now, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when you're empty nesters, and they're all adults and they come back to visit, that's what they want. They want those things that were all comfort foods to them. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm not making that stuff anymore because it's really bad for you, and, you know, it'll make you sick. And they're like, no, it won't. That stuff makes me feel better and makes me feel good and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's temporary. And, you know, when you try to tell them the whole thing about it really will depress you, I know it'll make you feel good for a few minutes. When you try to tell them all that stuff, they don't want to hear that.
No, they don't.
So
you really have to meet them where they're at, right? And I know with Michelle, I would just give her a little bit of information. I would just say, hey, you know, what's the worst that could happen? All right, we'll cut all the gluten out of your diet, and we'll just see. All right, let's just give it a while and see how you do. And if nothing happens, well then, you know, I was wrong, and we'll go on. But just give it a shot for a while and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
So when I got tested, you know, okay, so I got tested and I know it was negative. But the doctor was, and I was miserable, very miserable. The doctor was wanting to do a biopsy on me, and he was telling me, he's explaining how he's going to cut into my colon, you know, the whole thing. And he's falling asleep on me. So I'm thinking he actually has gluten issues. So, anyway, and I'm thinking, are you insane? You're not cutting into me. You're falling asleep. And so I come home and I told this whole story, and I thought, why is it their first instinct is to cut into you? Yeah. So we just decided I needed to go ahead and just cut it and see. So that's where we decided, okay, I'll just cut this. And so I did, and I was almost immediately better.
That's crazy.
So kind of like, well, okay. Well, then I did get tested later. And of course, I got tested in a different way later, and sure enough,
oh, wow.
So anyway, it's just one of those things where, you know, like I said, I did not come to this in a very happy way. Like, yeah, let me go check this all out. And I'm like so excited and get on all into the nerdy stuff. I didn't do that, not right away. And
it's tough, right? Because you have people come into this and they feel so good after having gone paleo for a while, and you just want to go out and evangelize to everybody. And that immediately, just human nature causes people to dig their heels in.
It does.
Human nature. So you just kind of have to meter it out just little bit by little bit. I know with our own kids even, you know, if they ask questions, we'll tell them. And you know, they know that anytime they want to talk about it, that we're open, and we'll tell them all the reasons why. All they have to do is ask. And eventually they'll come around. But, you know, everybody comes to this in their own time. So you just have to be patient for one thing. And I know that's very, very hard when there's one spouse that's, you know, fully on board and another one's dragging their feet. That's hard. I mean, that's a difficult place to be.
Yeah. I don't know that. The only thing that I can say is, like, there's one spouse with kids, little kids. That's where it's really difficult.
Yeah.
Because when there's one spouse, that's where I'm almost like, okay, put your foot down, because those are your children, and you need to you need to do what's best for your children. That part's hard, but
and so this all revolves back around too to public policy too, and affecting what you can do on a personal level, and then the other front is how can you affect public policy for the good.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good point. Well, we're coming up on time, but before we go, why don't we talk a little bit about what people should know about PaleoFX 13?
It's going to be a blast. We're going to have a good time. We are moving to a new home. We are going to be at the Palmer Event Center. We will be holding PaleoFX March 28th, 29th, and 30th. So that will be the last weekend of March. We do realize that is Easter weekend, but we will be ending on Saturday, so that people that do observe the holiday will have time to, get home, do whatever they want to do for that weekend.
So for those not familiar with what we do at PaleoFX, PaleoFX is the functional side of paleo, and we work hand in hand with the Ancestral Health Society. Okay, so that would be the academic arm of the paleo community. We are where the rubber meets the road. This is all about how people can implement paleo in their personal lives, and how people can affect, public policy, how people can, what fitness tools are available for people. And so it's very much a hands-on, vendor-intensive meeting.
Yeah, very functional. Get your hands dirty. Come get a workout in. There's going to be strength and conditioning, movement sessions, cooking demonstrations. There's going to be the plan is for us to have a food world. The cooking demonstrations will have their own stage this time.
Cool.
So we will be down with vendors and with strength and conditioning. We're going to look and see if we can get an area where we'll be able to have a strength and conditioning area where they can have a stage themselves. We're not quite sure that's going to work out, but we're trying to get that worked out.
So, for instance, at AHS, where it is decidedly an academic gathering, there's more of an emphasis on presentations. PaleoFX, there will be some presentations, but the emphasis is more on discussion panels, so that people can ask questions. There can be some give and take between the panelists. Some things can get hashed out. And so it's a little bit more. We don't have any academic standards per se to have to adhere to, whereas AHS certainly does, because they are, in fact, the academic end of this. So there's a little bit more give and take.
Very interactive.
Very interactive. Yeah.
That's the plan, is for it to be extremely interactive. And we are also working on some new pieces to PaleoFX. Working on some think tanks. And
oh, wow. So
we're pretty excited about that, and have some. We have a survey out on our Facebook page. There's some links there on our Facebook page. New information should be coming out on there as well, and we have a brand new website that's rolling out, and our new website will be rolling out as well. So
it's not yet ready for prime time, so
I know how that goes.
Right. So our new website will be rolling out on our Facebook page, so everybody needs to be paying attention there. That should be rolling out within the next few days, actually. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to.
It's in Austin, which is just a fabulously awesome place, especially that time of year.
Totally awesome.
And we hope to have some good coffee vendors at PaleoFX.
All right. That sounds great. Before I came to the first one, I was worried that there wouldn't be any coffee there because it's not technically Lauren Cordain Paleo.
Sure, yeah. We bend the rules just a bit when it comes to coffee.
You got to bend it for that. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, last year was tons of fun, and I can't wait for PaleoFX 13. And Keith and Michelle, thank you so much for coming on. We'll have to have you on again soon.
Hey, thanks for having us. Thank you very much.
You bet. I don't know about you guys, but I can't wait for PaleoFX 13. Last year was a heck of a lot of fun, and hopefully I'll be able to meet some of you listeners who I've never had the opportunity to meet before. You can check out Keith's work at ancestralmomentum.com, and you can also get the scoop on PaleoFX 13 at therealpaleofx.com. And don't forget to head on over to leanbodycommunity.com to get 30 days of online coaching from me for just $1 as a celebration of my last day of my day job. Finally finished up with that long extended contract, and I can't wait to work with you. So there are just a few spots left. Once again, it's leanbodycommunity.com, or of course you can go to fatburningman.com and check out the show notes, and I'll point you right to it. So thanks so much for listening, and I'll be talking to you guys soon. Cheers.